every lesson that we learn, I mean, we fix it with a person or a process. We try not to make the same mistakes twice. I feel like a lot of the growth just within my department has been based off of historicals. How do we make this better? How do we make this process run more smooth? How do we fix this upstream?
There's not a playbook that we're looking at to build custom. Every build that we touch is custom.
I think if there's anything that I've learned over the last 2 years, if I hire not just project managers, but subs within our core values, the rest is a lot easier.
Beyond building, we don't want to just deliver a product. We want to give clients an incredible experience. And that's one thing that's very difficult to do in growth and very difficult to do in managing all these different areas. What's up, bro?
What's up, man?
It's fun to have you back on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. This is like JRE, Joe Rogan setup.
Yeah.
it's evolved since I was here.
It has evolved. So let's talk a little bit about Barndo, man. Like, there's been a lot of change, a lot of things happening, you know. Well, I guess first and foremost, for those that don't know you, tell them who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Nick Menz. I'm the director of construction. So I manage permitting, purchasing, all of production, you know, and any support staff that falls in between that, like plan review and things like that. So
Yeah, man. You're the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the
man behind the curtain.
That's you, man. And but you know, it's fun to look at it now because you've been here for 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
And
2
so,
years and a month.
Yeah. So like over the last 2 years from then to now,
Yeah.
what would you say is like the biggest difference? We were joking about this before we even went live. Like, just even like your ability to just relax is different.
I feel like we were in growth mode, and I feel like we've just had to work in overdrive for the processes and the systems and the people to be able to catch up with the growth. And I feel like we've learned a lot. Every lesson that we learn, I mean, we fix it with a person or a process. You know, we try not to make the same mistakes twice. So I feel like a lot of the growth just within my department has been based off of historicals. How do we make this better? You know, how do we make this process run more smooth? How do we fix this upstream? But yeah, it's been a ride. That's for sure.
For sure. I tell everybody, bro, it's like we were riding the biggest, nastiest bull at the rodeo. And then when we got off, they found a bigger, nastier bull, put us back on it.
Yeah.
But you know, like I'll tell you something that I hear all the time, right? Like I talk to people nonstop about Barndo, and I like, you know, I can't help but see the comments and people asking questions. And one thing is we've had unprecedented growth, right? In the last 3 years. I mean, to go from a conceptual idea to now servicing 3 states and 6 offices and still growing. I see people say stuff like, hey, how do I know that with your growth that you can actually service me in this new area? You know, like somebody walks into Greensboro to build and like, they're like, hey, you know, like this is new, or Conway. And they're trying to build with Barndo Co, but in their mind, they're like, man, that's a lot of growth in a short period of time. Talk a little bit about that, because like your department in the last year is completely transformed. Not just, you know, with the personnel, but the process and everything. But talk a little bit about that. Like, you're the director of construction that oversees this whole madness, right? But between you to the individual building, talk a little bit about that, like in each area, how we maintain the same process and the same integrity, and that they're going to have the same experience building in, you know, Conway, South Carolina, as they are in Seymour, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that, you know, over the last couple years, my mind lives in a constant SWOT analysis. Like, I'm constantly looking at, you know, what do we need to do on our part to set everybody up for success? And what I mean by that is just the details. Like, what is our standard? How is this installed? When you're a general contractor, you know, you're communicating with all these subcontractors to make sure that they understand what their scope of work is, how we want them to do it, how it's supposed to look, you know, all these different things. So over time, we've developed a back office team, and, you know, we've created things like PDF files that show pictures of how we want all of our windows trimmed out. 3D PDF renderings that show how our porches are framed, and we've gotten better over time creating those things. So when we do onboard new subs in a new area and even a new project manager, it's easier to show them exactly what we expect and what our standards are. Where before we just tried to explain it to them, and I was just a constant resource every time they had a question. So I kind of had to formulate a plan like, how do I take the element of me out of this and just create a much more clear scope of work and all these different things to help streamline. This is exactly how Barndo does it. And it's a recruiting process, finding subs that fit our values and finding people that fit our values. And I think if there's anything that I've learned over the last 2 years is, if I hire not just project managers but subs within our core values, the rest is a lot easier. When I just look at your resume or I just look at your accolades and I don't look at like, do you really fit this vision that we have? I've ran into a lot of speed bumps like that. So I think that making sure that we have people that see our vision and want to be a part of our vision and just over communicating with them from the back office to make sure we're on the same page, because a plumber in Greensboro or a plumber in Conway, I mean, as long as we set them up for success and give them all the correct information, they can just go and execute. So a lot of it is the back office, the purchasing team, the operations manager, Billy, everybody in the back office, understanding the task at hand and understanding that there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of details, and how do we put packages together in a better way so when we do onboard a sub, we can say, hey, this is how we do it. This is what we expect from you. What do you expect from us? And that relationship is built before we ever put boots on the ground or before they ever do a job for us. So there's a lot of proactive planning that goes behind building that sub team and project management team before we start building.
What's really cool from my perspective, and I think a lot of people would appreciate this, is we've 6x'd in size and reach and build area and offices and all this stuff in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And our average build time has dropped by almost 50%.
Mhm.
Right? Now, granted, every job is independent of itself, but on average,
Mhm.
our speed of completion from permit to door keys has cut in half with the growth. And like that is speaking directly into what you're talking about. It's like we didn't just get bigger. We've spent our time getting better.
Mhm.
And developing these processes. I remember about a year ago, Mike put out a post into one of his, groups where we've got access to all these builders and tradespeople and stuff, and said, hey, any custom home builders building 200 to 300 custom homes a year, got some questions. And it was like 200 people commenting, and they're like, that doesn't exist, And so like, I think that's the other side of it is like, there's not a playbook that we're looking at to build custom. Every build that we touch is custom. I mean, it is customized,
Mhm.
at the very least, semi-custom, but it's still custom. There's nothing cookie cutter. There's nothing pre-selected. There's nothing that we're just stamping out the same thing over and over and over again. We don't do that. Like, I think that's kind of our biggest magnet to people is, are there other people that build? Sure. Are there other people that build, pretty good volume of homes? Sure. But are there people that will really cater to build customs to where almost every time we put a picture up, it's just like this complete one-off build? How the heck do you do that effectively, building in 400 counties and managing all these different people? And it comes down to that leadership aspect. Like when you came into Barndo, you were doing a lot, like physically. Now you lead a massive team, and your leadership has been insane to experience. And I love showcasing this stuff. Like when I get to bring you guys in, because people just don't understand some of the dynamic of the company, but we have incredible leaders, like someone that's leading construction of 300 homes a year. That's a lot. And it's not like we're building 300 homes in a subdivision. We're building 300 homes stretched across 3 states and every rural remote access point in America, like, and they're all different. And you're doing it with a team of project managers. Some of them been with us for 3+ years. Some of them been with us for 6-7 months.
Mhm.
And your ability to create a system that we could scale, right? Because my biggest driver was I want to help more people. I want to help more people at all costs. I want to go. Like there's no denying that. Like I'm always full throttle wanting to expand. Um, but to do it and do it effectively, it took getting good leaders in place and getting you guys to become leaders in charge and running your department. And you've done that. So like one of the things I'd love to showcase is this. Like, and it's fun for me because I get to talk to other builders all over the country that ask questions about stuff. And like when I
Yeah.
start talking to them about the process, they're like, "Man, how the heck? Like, like how do you find these people?" And you hit it. We look for people that share the value. But talk a little bit about like all the stuff that we're measuring and all the stuff that's being like held so highly accountable. Billy, right?
Hmm.
So Billy direct reports to you. And Billy is doing what in the company?
Yeah. So, just the story behind that just period is, just to kind of highlight a little bit of what you said is I think that I've had to be a visionary and an integrator in a lot of ways, and I kind of had a vision for what needed to happen, and I knew that. I only had limited resources. So there were a lot of hats I had to wear. There were a lot of hats that Heath had to wear. And as we grew, I always had my next move of, okay, if I have the budget, this is my next person that I need the most. And I've always had to plan that way. How do I keep this wheel moving? All these moving parts, and what is the next dire need as far as a person or a process? So I always knew that Billy was a special human being because I've worked with him in prior companies. And he was ultra organized, ultra passionate. And, I just felt like he was underutilized where he was. So when I hired him, he wanted to be a project manager. And I was like, nope, you're going to be a manager. And he was like, me? I was like, absolutely. And I think I've built my whole department like that. I've had to look at the potential in people. And I feel like in a way, Barndo did that for me too. Is they saw I had the experience and the potential, and they just believed in me to make decisions. So I've kind of tried to do that with my people too. Like, they come to me and want me to make a decision, and I'm like, nope, it's your decision to make. And some of that Mike had to do with, if I'm honest. But
Yep.
so originally Billy was a area manager. I had him in the field, helping with training and looking at stuff, and in the evenings or on his admin days, he was like building this spreadsheet to where, because I wanted him to track schedules because, schedules, I know from a client perspective, they get to see what's happening the next 2 weeks. But our ability to plan for everything is contingent upon these schedules. It's the one visibility that every department at Barndo Co has to see. It affects every apartment to be able to see where the schedule is. So I just decided to change his title, and I just was like, okay, you're the field operations manager, and you're going to track operations as far as they deal with schedules, site visits. You're just going to coordinate all of these things that production does and how we communicate with other departments. So, grading quotes, site visits, making sure that everything is documented for the other departments, tracking schedules, tracking daily logs. So, Billy kind of manages all of that. So, from a client perspective, when you see 20 pictures on your daily log, that's because Billy checks every week to make sure that they're taking a sufficient amount of pictures, making sure that their schedule's up to date. Making sure that within 10 days of somebody onboarding that we go out and do a site visit and the full list of questions that we have are answered. So, Billy kind of is the conductor of all those things. And he's the perfect human being on this planet to do that job.
He's the warden of the
Yeah.
prison farm,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Well, here's the thing that we know. Beyond building, we don't want to just deliver a product. We want to give clients an incredible experience. And that's one thing that's very difficult to do in growth and very difficult to do and manage in all these different areas. But we were adamant about it, right? We want people to have a great experience. We want them to have the same experience, regardless of what office they're walking into, regardless of where they're at in our build area. They're going to have the same experience. And it started with getting really clear on these things and like having a Billy. To give you those, and like we use Builder Trend
Hmm.
to track this. It gives access and purview to the homeowner throughout the process, because a lot of times we're building for people that maybe don't even live locally, right? And And that's crazy, right? If you're a homeowner, you kind of want to know what's going on with the property. And like traditionally, you have to go out to the job site and you have to ask a bunch of questions, and it just runs people ragged, right? Because they're having to like now schedule a time of the day to go and meet with the client and answer this question that they've already answered. And so like I think training homeowners on the front end too of how we run our system and how they utilize builder trends so that they can get in and see these things. And literally those pictures, that was a gripe from me too, was like, hey, like we have so many builds going on, I need some pictures of like what's happening around these job sites. And Billy was like, amen, we're going to take 20 every week of everything that's going on. Every time your boots hit the ground at this job site, you're documenting everything. But what it's done is not just pictures, but a daily log update of everything happening on the job, any delays, anything ahead of schedule, anything that's a possible issue, anything that's going well. And they're documented. And the homeowners now are like tied into that to where the need for hand holding has diminished greatly. They know more about their job than most people would ever know about their job. And having that, and like the thing that I really would love to drive home is if you're a client with Barndo Co, the amount of care and attention and detail and the amount of people that are working on your project is massive. It's not
Mm,
just a project manager in the field.
no.
There is so many moving pieces happening behind the scenes, and I want to shine light on that. Like Billy running those schedules and having those so dialed in and so on top of it and making sure that all those pieces of information are in there and that schedules are constantly being updated, and you know that gives homeowners peace of mind. Yeah, it helps us, right? Like interdepartmentally, you said it, like every department depends on this schedule.
Mhm.
Cool, homeowners do too. And like their experience now versus what it was when we first started is a million times better. And their access and their visibility and understanding of what's happening on their job site is at an all-time elevated level, right? And that comes from not having a good system and fighting every tooth and nail argument because they just don't know, right? And you get a phone call and you load up and go meet a homeowner on site and they're asking like basic questions that now we just do a really good job of documenting that process along the way, so they're just as educated as the project manager along the way. So this episode is sponsored by the Barndo Co. You can visit us online at thebarndoco.com and get started building your dream barndominium today. We specialize in build on your lot turnkey barndominium solutions. We have a whole gallery of plans that you can explore through. You can also go full custom route. You can get in touch with us through the website by filling out the contact us form, and one of our Barndo professionals will reach out to you, get your dream started today. Talk a little bit more about your department. Like who all's got a hand in the pot from the moment they onboard. They talk to their sales agent, they get onboarded, then Alicia's team, the client experience team, takes over and starts working, doing all this stuff. They get in with our designers start designing, and then as they get closer to the end of that process, they get plugged into production, which is you orchestrating this massive team, the biggest department in terms of personnel
Yeah.
in the company is you, right? And there's so many moving pieces in that. So like shine some light on your team. You got some studs, like rock
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah, I really do. And yeah, so we're involved in the process all the way through. And I was thinking about what you were saying, and I was thinking about, you were talking about like how are we consistent? Like how do we really have that consistency in each market? And I think that it's a double-edged sword because like when it comes to certain design aspects and it comes to certain requests for finishes, the reason we say no to certain things is because of that. Like how can we deliver, an average build time that we want to be in 180, 220 days, and how can we negotiate with our subs to where they can go to the job and do it right the first time? How can we build something to where the design doesn't cause a lot of issues? I think that some of the reason we say no is to benefit the client. I did want to highlight that is that, we know the parameters in which we can deliver consistency, and we try to manage those parameters because if we go way too crazy out in left or right field, we know it will affect the client experience because we're doing something that we're not comfortable doing, or maybe selling something that we don't really know a person that we trust to do that. So, but as far as my team, like I was saying, Billy's involved in the front end of the process. So when somebody onboards and that site visit is scheduled, Billy assigns the project manager based on territories. We have these giant maps. People don't realize, as many counties as we're in, figuring out quadrants and territories and, who's closest and what job is on their way to their other job. Billy has this giant map on his wall with highlighted sections. So the first thing we do is figure out who the project manager would be on this job. And we have 10 days to do a site visit. That's the time that we've committed to with the sales team. Um, and then we have this full SOP of what we expect from a site visit. So pictures, videos, all these things that everybody uses to understand this land. Even our designers. So like when designing a plan, if they have a question about, how the land is laid out, we have a minimum amount of pictures and videos that our guys take when they go out there, and they might say, "Oh, that makes sense." So there's also a long questionnaire. Like, are there power lines in the way? Is the site accessible for construction? All these things to make sure that all those boxes are checked, that we go out there and we give a good analysis on what we see. So we're involved in the front end of the process there. And then once preliminary plans come back, we go through the same process where a grading quote is scheduled. And then we have a deadline that Billy manages to make sure that we get the grading quote back. And then we have a two-step process where purchasing and Billy have to sign off on every grading quote. We look at the videos and pictures to make sure that what the grader is quoting us makes sense, to make sure they're not like, you need 200 loads of dirt. And we look at the pictures and we're like, dude, this is a flat lot. So we look at all the videos and pictures and make sure that what the grader is saying needs to happen makes sense. And we make sure that the grader breaks everything down, is descriptive on what he's charging and why, all the way down to machine time, what machines you're bringing to the lot. And then once purchasing and Billy give the thumbs up, then they upload that quote back into the Asana portal where the sales agent can share it with the client. Once people exit design or get close to the final revision, I have Heath that does plan review. So he goes in and he looks at it and he makes sure that everything lines up with how we build, that there's not a truss in a window or a beam that's spanned further than what code or engineering allows it to span. Because sometimes designers don't always understand how things translate from paper to field. We understand because we've done it so many times. So it goes through a process where Heath looks at it and he says, "Hey, I feel like this beam is spanning a little too far," and then we make adjustments there. And then he does the same thing when the proposal is signed. He checks and makes sure everything lines up with the plans. Make sure everything that makes sense. And then once people enter finance, there's two departments that I manage that are involved. So we have permitting, where Jennifer starts the process of permitting. And this is why the documents that clients are responsible for are so important, because for us to get a permit quickly and break ground, there's so many things we need. We need the well permit. We need the septic permit. We need, all the information for the 911 address, all these different things. If those stones are left unturned, it becomes Jennifer's job to do it, and we lose time in permitting. But the same day that they go into finance, when Jennifer in permitting takes it, the purchasing team starts. So that's when we start combing through all the selections, everything that was chosen, and we start sending out bid requests to all the subs with, detailed description of this job. Hey, they're getting matte black this, there's this many fixtures, and lining up who the subcontractors are going to be for that job. So I think that it is important for people to hear that sometimes even when you exit finance, if we don't quite have your permit yet and you do your pre-construction meeting with us and there's this lull of time that goes by where we haven't scraped dirt, there's 3 or 4 people at our office every day negotiating, labor and materials on the job. So we don't ever stop working on a job. Even when a week goes by and there's a cabinet delay and nothing's happened, we're still working on purchase orders. We're still doing things on that job. You just might not see somebody on that job.
Yep.
So and that's kind of all. And then Billy and Connor stay involved throughout the build process, helping solve issues, tracking schedules, making sure that everything's on point. So we're pretty involved with the whole process, especially once we have the permit. Everybody at our office is involved. But
Yeah.
I know that was probably too much
No,
information,
it's
but that's
good.
that's
It's
the
good.
best way I could kinda
Yeah, if you're a
describe our
homeowner
involvement.
watching this, like I think it's good to show them like the dedicated team
Mhm.
that's making this possible. It's not possible with a few guys.
No, it's
You
impossible.
know, like if you come into one of those satellite offices, it's it's not huge. You know, it's a big design center. There's some local people that work there, right? You have project managers and you have you know um, office managers and salespeople and design consultants and all these different people in that office. But sometimes it can be a little bit deceiving of like, hey, what's happening in my area? And like they don't realize unless they're in the upstate, we got this massive hub where all this stuff is happening, from engineering to
Mhm.
plan review, proposal review, and we're looking through all those things. And the goal is like to catch mistakes.
Mhm.
And we would love to catch them on paper before we catch them in production, right? And so we've put a lot of emphasis on that because, like it sounds redundant, but they picked out this farmhouse sink. Well, is that the same size that's indicated on the plan? Is a change needed? Is this happening? And making sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's way before we get into the field so that we can execute and execute quickly and efficiently. And the goal is once the homeowner signs a proposal and they come through that process, and like I've talked about this pretty in depth with Alicia and her team, and that how sales and client experience team really work together to create this harmony so that the homeowner's got a lot of to-dos on the front end, right? From onboard to closing, the homeowner's really working, right? They're pulling their surveys and they're pulling their all these different aspects of like the utilities
Yeah.
that are going to be on
Septic,
site,
well, all this stuff.
septic, well, water tie-in, sewer if it's necessary, like whatever is going on, they're
Mhm.
handling getting all the documentation to us. But the goal is once they come in, they have that pre-construction meeting and the deal's closed, that they don't have a lot to do. Like we've done a lot of the heavy lifting in the beginning. Now you're just waiting for move-in day, and all the decisions have been made, and we run the play, right?
Mhm.
And things get to run kind of according to what was designed versus hey, when we get to cabinets, we send you to the cabinet company to talk about them. When we get to the paint, we send you to the paint store to pick out your colors. When we get here,
Yeah.
we send you to the floor place.
If we built
Like,
5 homes a year, we could do that.
yeah, no, you can't do it with the volume that we have,
No,
and
it's
and
impossible.
have great experiences. And the fun thing about that is like we recently have a client that just onboarded with us to build their second home with us, and they were one of the first 10, if not first 5 people we ever built for.
Yeah.
And just on the front end part, they came back in and went through it, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is night and day different." And we're like, "Yeah, man, like we figured it out. Like we know." Like the process has to change. We're building hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes. It's all about efficiency now,
Mhm.
and so I think everyone who comes in on the front end of the process now, their experience is just night and day different.
Mhm.
And not even that it was bad prior. It's just it's so much bigger and so much more efficient. There's so many more people involved now that it just happens so much quicker. And like we can identify problems way before we get in the field and encounter it.
100%. And I think too, like, when we hire people and we sometimes even create new departments, our objective is not just how do we build more, it's how can we be better. I
Yep.
mean, even right now I'm wanting to expand the permitting department, so on the front end we can get involved with some of this, septic and well, and my goal is to create better resources for information, while we're getting these documents, so if a client has a question about what we need from them, there's a professional that understands it. So like every person I hire and every decision that I make is based on this, client experience, expectations, client experience. How do we, from the day they onboard to the day we hand them keys, how can we be on the same page, and how can we manage this client experience? So it's not just I hire people so we can build more houses. I hire people, create process, create departments so we can build better, and
Yeah,
clients can have a better experience.
100%. We want to be the best.
Exactly. We want
That's
to be the
we
best.
want to be the best. Set the standard.
Mhm.
Set it high. And the thing is, goes back to Truett Cathy, man. Like that's one of my favorite stories ever. I've talked about it before. They're sitting in a board meeting in the early days of Chick-fil-A, and there's some competition happening, and everybody's talking about we need to build more stores, this, the other, and all this stuff. And they say, Truett's sitting there and he kind of pounds his hand on the table, and everybody gets quiet, like, what is going on? And he's like, I don't want to be the biggest chicken sandwich. I want to be the best. And if we are the best, then people will demand that we become the biggest. And that's kind of the mindset and the
I love that.
model that we've adopted is if we can make it the most efficient way and we can make it where people have great experiences, it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. It's very easy, very mapped out. And we have very seasoned experts in every phase of the build because it's hard for one person to walk it from concept to door key. It's just a lot. You can't be that efficient at all of it. So what we've done is we've went down and we've bullet pointed the entire experience from the first contact form on the website to 2 years after they've moved in and they're doing their final warranty punch. Like every piece of that has been indicated, and we're trying to develop a specialist for every single piece of it along the way so that people can have an absolute incredible experience from beginning to end, and we can take away some of the stigma and dogma of like, hey, I hired them to build, but I hate them now, because it's stressful. It's the most stressful thing in the world to build a new home. It is insanely stressful to build a new home. It's going to be stressful.
It's going to be stressful.
And our goal is to make it as great of an experience as it can be under those circumstances, right? You're spending all of your money, all of your time. A lot of time people are homeless in between because they've sold a house and they're doing whatever. Our goal isn't just to build more barns. Our goal isn't just to post good pictures and cool product. We want to have the best process, and we've spent years cultivating it, creating it, and it's not done. Like it's constantly getting better, and we're obsessed with it. Like you're obsessed with it.
I am, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was going to say that, like, and if there is anybody listening to this who built with us that has a bone to pick with some things that happened, I think that as long as we don't have the mentality that we're right and everybody else is wrong, we've probably looked at what you had to complain about, like. During this period, I don't feel like this was explained well to me, right? I don't feel like I was communicated with well here. We probably sat down and had a meeting about it and say, hey, how can we be better here? Like,
there's no question.
And so it wasn't in vain, even bad feedback. I mean, we take heed to it. Like, where is there a chink in the armor?
Well, there's no bad feedback. Well, it's just,
angry feedback.
Yeah,
not
sure.
bad feedback.
A 1-star review is just as positive to me as a 5-star review because it allows me to see from the viewpoint of the consumer, right? And we can do it. And the cool thing is right now, 200 jobs in construction, and I'd say we're 99% 5-star. And that's a huge swing in the right direction because I can remember when we first getting started, like we didn't even know how to answer some of the questions that we were getting because we'd never done it before. We never built that kind of volume. Like, the people are like, hey, who's going on here? Like, nobody's been on my job this week, and we're like, yeah, we're trying to build 60 houses with 5 guys, and like, to be in a position now to where everything is mapped out, dialed in. The new location has been staffed months prior to a ribbon cutting, and the process is in place to where when you walk in, you could come on ribbon cutting day, right? Conway's ribbon cutting is coming up in like 2 weeks, right? You walk in that day, sign a contract, and know that at that moment in time, you're going to have the same experience as if you walked into headquarters up in Duncan, South Carolina, and had a conversation and signed a contract. And you're gonna have the same process, same experience. It's gonna be great. Not only that, but you get to work with Scott, and Scott's, a incredible human. Just set a record. I'm not gonna say how many days. Yeah. I'm not gonna say how many days. I'm not gonna set us up for false hope. Yeah. But it was like 3 months, guys. Like from permit to door keys. And you can celebrate those because the process allows it to happen. Right? Perfect clients.
I was gonna say that. Like, let me unpack that because it is important to say when we don't have someone fight us every step of the way, when we're able to build the house and talk about problems but solve problems, and everything isn't a negotiation or I don't think it should look like this. We can build houses a lot quicker.
100%. 106 days.
106 days.
That's counting weekends.
You said it first.
That's counting weekends. Right.
It
Like,
was 75 weekends. I hope I don't butcher it. I think 31 non-work days. 75 work days, I'm sorry, and like 31 non-work days.
yeah. And that house went from a permit to them moving in. And that's possible with the process that we have in place now.
Yes.
It is possible. Does it mean you're going to have that experience? Absolutely not. And honestly, as a homeowner, you're just as much in the driver's seat as we are, because it can become super combative.
It
and,
can.
and our goal is what we've learned over the years in building hundreds of these is homeowners don't know what they don't know. And so we try to educate as much as possible along the way now so that they do know. And the better we've gotten at that, like that client came in to a perfect machine and they moved in their home faster than some clients will even allow us to permit, because they want to battle us on, locations of utilities and stuff that we have no control over. Like we can't combat DHEC if they say your septic
Yeah.
tank has to be here.
Exactly.
And so it's some of it's personality, so like, yeah, you want to speed up your build, then come in, get educated, trust the process, and let us build, because that's what we're good at.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm pumped about all the improvements, everything that's happened. You've done an incredible job, man. You're a
Thank
rock
you.
star leader,
Thank you.
and you lead through people. Like, you have leaders that you lead in our organization. And if you're a business owner and you're looking at this and you're thinking like, what is the secret sauce here? It's leadership.
It's leadership.
Right? It's
yeah.
leadership. It's bigger than me. It was bigger than me and Ross. We had to build a team. We had to then equip that team with a leader who could grow the team and deal with it. And that's your lane, bro. I don't get in the way. I'm gonna get run over. If I try to jump in front of your truck, I'll get ran flat. And so, it's great to have that, but like, my desire is to build community. And we've done that inside the company. And I, privileged to have someone like you in this organization, because you make it better. You're better than I am at what you do. And I mean, again, dude, like, incredible job, transformation from who we were to who we are today. And a lot of it goes hats off to Nick, because Nick's been in the trenches and you fought your way through that and build out a vision. You're right.
Yeah.
You are a visionary. And it's powerful to be able to have a visionary in a company, as a visionary of a department that can transform it into what it is today and write the standard for what it looks like to be a custom, non-traditional home builder, building in multiple states, building hundreds of custom homes, and write the playbook so that other people can have an easier journey when they jump in and start.
I did want to say too, I didn't want to, like, when you were talking about growing into new markets and all this work that, I did not mention Vanessa, who is, the lead in purchasing right now, and all the work she puts into being a resource for our subcontractors and scope of work and negotiating pricing. And, she is the heartbeat of what it takes to build a market. But I do want to say too that, our mission, vision, and core values, even this podcast, even people knowing what we're about, every new market we go into is easier because subs know who we are. They know that we're involved in things like Carolina Miracle League. We've done a good job marketing who we are and what's really important to us. So like, we'll go into a new market and subs want to work for us.
Yeah.
So like, the question of how do we build that consistency and how do we build a new market, the more people know who we really are and what's important to us and what we're really about, the more people want to work with us.
Yeah. And how do we protect it? By aligning with people who share
with people that share our values.
Yep. And never negotiate. That's a non-negotiable for us.
Exactly.
From clients to subs to vendors to employees, we're not going to negotiate on our values. And if it's not a value alignment, we just choose not to do business.
Exactly.
All right. I love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
I love having you on the show and getting to cut it up, man. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about UFC and Savage Denim, but we'll save that for a later date.
That's
all right,
cool.
man. Thanks for coming and doing the show.
Thanks, man.